In these unprecedented times that we live in, Christopher Nolan's latest $200 million blockbuster has become not simply the most anticipated film of the summer, but the film that many in the industry hope will save cinema. So hearing the call of duty, I valiantly put on my mask, left my bunker, and trekked outwards to the local cinema for the first time in half a year. Was it worth it? Well, unfortunately not. Nolan's 21st century track record as a filmmaker is second to none, having never made a film that I regard as being less than great. That's why it's such a shame that not only is this Nolan's worst film to date, but also a film that I found genuinely unbearable at points, and one that at times I couldn't wait to be over. The main problem with Tenet is undoubtedly its script. Nolan is excellent at making engaging and complex blockbusters, but here he's completely failed at writing something that's engaging on a basic level. The film stands at 2.5 hours long, and during that 2.5 hours, the film does not slow down for even a second. There's no room to breathe, but more importantly, no characterization. It's just exposition and explanation after exposition and explanation. You're given no reason to care, no characters to identify with. You're just listening to people talk about metaphysics and entropy in this arms plot that isn't the least bit interesting for scene after scene after scene after scene. I just wanted the movie to slow down for a second, tell us who these characters are, and make them seem like anything other than machines to explain the plot and push it forward, but it never does this. And even putting all that to one side, the script isn't particularly great anyway. Nolan is the master of these puzzle movies, with Inception standing as perhaps the best blockbuster of the last decade. But there's a big difference between making a complicated story that requires multiple viewings to unpack and writing a story that doesn't properly communicate what's happening between scenes, and unfortunately this is very much the latter. The acting is fine for the most part. Everyone's doing their best with this rather unwieldy script, and I can only imagine what it must have been like reading this on paper for the first time and trying to work out how the hell you play your character. The exception to this is Kenneth Branagh. I imagine this is Nolan's fault over his, but he's completely chewing the scenery. And in a film which is so insistent on its own seriousness, I should not have been wanting to laugh at how evil the villain was, especially because there's a rather poorly handled domestic abuse subplot as well. It's not all bad, however. The film's visual effects and reverse entropy gimmick, I'm sorry, but that's what it is, are mind-blowing, and even though it's hard to care about the film's actual plot, the action sequences are well-directed and fairly unique. Nolan's commitment to practical effects is as commendable as ever, and so too is his choice of shooting the film using large-format celluloid, which looks crisp and clear even when projected digitally. It is therefore rather disappointing that the film's editing makes it rather hard to appreciate these things. There are just so many cuts to alternative angles where there absolutely shouldn't be any, and it really lessens the impact of the film's action as a whole, and reminds you that you're not actually in this world, but rather in a cinema watching a film. Nolan's editing is usually a lot more fluid than this, and I'm wondering if this is the result of the reverse cinematography. Even if it is, however, that's not really an excuse, because if Nolan couldn't shoot the film without needing to cut every 5 seconds, then he should have found a less ugly looking plot device. Finally, on an audio level, the film unfortunately manages to be as bad as its script is. Hans Zimmer is out for this one, choosing instead to work on Denis Villeneuve's upcoming adaptation of Dune, and so we're left with Ryan Coogler and Childish Gambino collaborator Ludwig Göransson, whose score is so intransigently bass-heavy that it feels like at times we've entered a Michael Bay film, something that is not really helped by the fact that it's mixed into the film at a staggeringly high volume to render it incredibly noticeable as well. There are a few brief moments where the accompanying score manages to be energetic and engaging, but those are few and far between. It really gives me no pleasure to say that the first major film to come out since the start of the pandemic, and probably the last one to come out until next year, is really quite bad. 2016's Dunkirk was an absolute classic, an exhilarating and beautifully made exercise in tension and visual storytelling, which is why it's such a shame that Nolan follows up one of the greatest examples of show don't tell cinema to come out in the last 5 years with a film that can do nothing except tell for 2.5 hours straight. And in this time of COVID, I legitimately regret my trip to the cinema. If you live in a country where it's safe to do so and you want to support your local cinema, then by all means head out to this one, but otherwise stay home and keep binging those classics instead. And I'm giving Tenet a 3 out of 10.